Welcome to Ask the Experts, a reoccurring panel discussion where industry-leading cleaning experts tackle the most difficult cleaning challenges that you and your brand face every day. So who are the experts? First, our host, Mike Perazzo. For nearly 2 decades, Mike's passion for the cleaning industry has transformed cleaning operations for Fortune 500 companies across the country. Nick Wiebe, with a decade of experience in cleaning solutions, Nick brings a process-oriented, results-driven approach to the toughest cleaning challenges. Dave Landingham, a 12-year veteran of the cleaning industry. Dave uses out-of-the-box thinking to overhaul cleaning operations in retail and grocery operations. And Alan Randolph, with over 40 years of experience in all facets of the cleaning world, Alan brings a wealth of knowledge and solutions to help facilities maximize their cleaning effectiveness. With over 100 years of combined experience, there isn't a challenge they haven't taken on. And now, our experts take on their most exciting challenge yet, helping you with yours.
If I was doing ATP and I understood those fundamentals, it's about driving that number as low as I can.
You've got to make sure that we have the right amount of chemical mixed in with the right amount of water.
If you just throw disinfectant at a surface without removing the gross soils, what have we done?
This is called an ATP meter, and this allows you to do rapid verification.
All right, it is 11:30. We want to thank everyone for being here. This Ask the Expert panel is such a cool opportunity to engage with you, get some questions out that maybe you're thinking about, maybe you're struggling as a team, as a staff. It's fun to have this interaction. One of the cool things is, Kaivac celebrating its 26th year in business. And so we see a lot of things, and I'm excited to be your host today. I'm Mike Perazzo. I'm our Chief Growth Officer. I've been with the company for 17 of those years and happy to kind of lead this panel discussion, but more importantly, get some interaction going with our community to learn about what are the things that are troubling you, what are you thinking about? So before we dive in to some of that, I want to introduce the panel to you. So I'm going to start off with Alan Randolph.
Hi, everybody. Alan Randolph. I am the Senior VP of Client Solutions, and I've been in the cleaning industry for 40 years. Woof, that sounds like a long time.
A lot of years, bud.
But excited to be here and looking forward to kind of sharing some experience.
That's awesome.
Nick Wiebe, I'm a strategic account manager. I have been in the industry for about 10 years, all of which have been at Kaivac.
That's awesome. We're glad to have you. Dave?
Dave Landingham, also a strategic account manager, and I've been here at Kaivac for 12 years as well.
So one of the great things about this panel is being in the industry this long, you serve a diverse group of customers throughout those years. And so there's great knowledge from small accounts, mid-size accounts, all the way up to enterprise accounts. And because cleaning really belongs in every building, we kind of are on that journey together as a team. It's really not a whole lot we haven't seen. That doesn't mean that we know everything. It's just we do get the opportunity to interact with a lot of different clients and a lot of different buildings. And so you kind of begin to accumulate this knowledge for the industry. And any chance you get to share that back, I think is an important one. So we have some customers here in the studio audience. And of course, when you have one of your local customers, they want to be hard on you and throw you a tough curveball. And so I said earlier, if you had to ask me one question to really stump me, where would you start me off? And they said, well, can you even provide a definition of clean? And I said, okay, here we go. Let's throw out the hardball right away. So let's tackle that with Nick, okay? So it seems like a really straightforward question, but it's really not a simple answer. As you define clean or the approach that we have, what are your thoughts on that?
So how we define clean is the removal of unwanted matter and the proper disposal of that unwanted matter.
So it's a simple definition, but it's literally about identifying soil, capturing soil, and then getting it where it's supposed to be.
Correct.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. And so if you think of it at that basic term, it allows that conversation to kind of evolve. And so the second question from our customer was, well, that's great. I love that definition, but how do I measure clean? How do I know that I'm effective? So Alan, I want to ask you that question. It's great basic definition, but how do I know that I'm doing it?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. So there's a couple of ways I would think about this, right? Cleaning is a system. That system removes unwanted matter and disposes of it properly. So first you need to establish a baseline of what you have. The traditional method for measuring clean was the old white glove test. And not that actually anybody puts on a white glove and swipes, but you could. But it's more using your senses, your eyes, your nose, your ears. But that's still kind of subjective because everybody scores a little bit differently. So the most common way to do kind of cleaning system validation is using some scientific tool. Actually, I think we might have an example here. This is called an ATP meter. And this allows you to do rapid verification. Take a swab, do a controlled area, post cleaning, and determine how much of the organic matter you removed.
Okay.
So you would have your current state. You want to do it right after you clean, but before people use the building, because then it's automatically get contaminated again. So the interesting thing is, as you could see, you could end up chasing yourself around the building, swabbing stuff. I've done it. I bought my first ATP meter over 25 years ago. And I thought I was going to go out and unlock all these aha moments. And you really don't, unless you really understand how to conduct experiments and how to get data that you can actually compare and contrast. So what I would tell people is define your system, define what you're trying to improve, and make sure you're testing for that improvement, not just running around the building swabbing stuff. Because if you're swabbing doorknobs and somebody just sneezed on their hand and touched it, that really has no impact on your cleaning system. That's just the amount of contamination that your building got.
Yes.
This is a fabulous question.
So for people that, maybe it's their first introduction to ATP, you're seeing a numeric value of like a bioload.
Yeah. You swab it, you put it in here, and it just gives you, in consistent terms, the meter's always reading the same thing. And so you're getting that same way to compare and contrast. There's other ways, right? So you can do testing of slip resistance on floors with a tribometer. You could use gloss meters. You can use a lot of different tools, depends on what you're trying to solve for. But soil removal, to Nick's definition, is the key, unless it's a liability concern, and then you might be looking at coefficient of friction.
Makes total sense. So in basic terms, if I was doing ATP and I understood those fundamentals, it's about driving that number as low as I can with the people that I have and the process that I have. We want to drive the removal as low as possible. Okay, so that's kind of a cool way to set this up. And then it obviously leads into a question that I see coming in. Well, okay, now we're talking about defining clean. We're talking about measuring clean. Somehow chemistry always comes up in this conversation is, well, what's the difference between disinfecting and like general cleaners, and why should I care, or how do I know what to do? Like there is confusion on that concept. So Alan, if you were to kind of jump in on the disinfecting question, I think it's a good place to start. And then I'm interested to hear what Dave has to say, because I know some of the clients that he serves that try to create this balance. So how would you respond to that?
Well, it's interesting because we just talked about the meter and it gives you a numeric value. Well, when you swab and you put it in the meter, what you think you want is that number to be zero, right? I want to make sure it's zero. Zero is really hard, right? On ATP, depending on the meter, maybe it's under 100 is considered safe. But Dave, how do you think about the difference between disinfecting and cleaning?
Well, we have to understand there's removal first. All right, let's get to that. So if you want to disinfect and you go the opposite way, if you just throw disinfectant at a surface without removing the gross soils, what have we done? All we've done is killed what was there, but we've left these dead carcasses inside the space, no removal.
Yeah.
So we have to go about the process of what even the disinfectant says. So you need to clean the grow soils first, and then you need to use the disinfectant, which is effectively a pesticide, to kill anything that could be remaining at all, right?
Yeah. It's kind of the example I give people is if you wanted to put weed killer on your yard to get rid of dandelions, but the grass was this tall, probably not going to be super effective, right?
Yeah.
You need to get rid of kind of all of the stuff so you could actually get to the roots so you could effectively do that last step.
And Nick, you do a lot of training on this because you service some very large brands, and getting that down to the worker level is super important. When people are using disinfectants, what's kind of the things that people kind of overlook and don't think about? You know, Dave uses the word controlled pesticide. That's real, but like when you're advising at the ground level, like where the action's happening, what does that really mean to the worker? Like, what do they
Right.
have to do?
So again, it is a registered pesticide by the EPA. And what that means is there are some rules that you have to follow in order for that to work effectively against what you're trying to kill.
What's
So-
an example of like a rule? Like what's an example of something that we constantly see overlooked?
Dwell time is a big one. You know, there's dwell time built in for that chemical to be able to do its job. And then the proper dilution. You got to make sure that we have the right amount of chemical mixed in with the right amount of water.
I think those are perfect examples. Is like you do have a level of responsibility to follow the directions. In fact, you know, it tells you it's against the law to not to use this product any way that's different from the directions that are laid out for you. It's said a little more eloquently that on each of the bottles, but that statement is there. What's an example where you guys saw disinfecting kind of like lose control that makes sense to our audience? Alan,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
It just happened not long ago, right? COVID-19 pandemic, right? So everybody's like, I don't know, the human race may be in jeopardy. So, but the instructions coming from the professionals, because of the science, is wash your hands, wash your hands. It's a perfect example of cleaning, proper hand washing. But what we did as the cleaning industry, unfortunately, is we rushed to disinfectant, electrostatic sprayers,
Everything.
Like it was just you couldn't even find disinfectant. Distilleries were what used to make tequila are now making disinfectant that smelled like tequila. Like, I mean, it was crazy time. But the public knows if you don't wash your hands, if you got dirty hands and you try and just put a little hand sanitizer on there, you aren't getting what you want. So I think that's really the best example that still should stick in everybody's mind.
Yeah, and Dave, like you're talking about, you know, this removal aspect, and you said it in your early statements is if I'm just applying chemistry, I may be killing some germs, I may be reducing some risk, but there's that leave behind. So
Sure.
like if you think about Alan's example, and we're just constantly treating surfaces, what was missing from that scenario?
Removal. We have to flush that away or remove it with another tool, a vacuum or something like that. It has to go somewhere, or else it just stays. I mean, to Alan's point, I mean, taking away the big COVID-19 epidemic, pandemic
Right.
scenario, just daily stuff. If you have hand sanitizer in your car and you want to stop at a fast food restaurant and you just apply some to kill something on your hands before you eat those fries, it's one thing because you're thinking to yourself, I know where my hands have been, right? So maybe I'm just giving it a little bit of a kill, so that I can eat that food. But if you look back and your kid is back here and those hands have been
Everywhere.
everywhere, a little hand sanitizer on those hands, it's not going to really help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a stopgap, right?
Yeah.
You want to get into that removal. And that's why I think it's so important just for our community to get back to that basic definition, the removal of unwanted matter and putting it in its proper place. So whether you're disinfecting, whether you're cleaning, whether you're using hand sanitizer, at the end of the day, we want to get it off. We want to have chemical agitation, time, and temperature. That should be showing up. And that's why hand washing, to your point, was so important. I am using some chemical. I'm using water. I'm using agitation. I'm trying to free my surfaces from having anything that's harmful. So that's a good start. I appreciate that stuff. When we talk about general cleaners, Nick, you have a lot of clients that run general cleaners as part of their everyday cleaning program. What's the value of like a cleaner? Like, what is it really there to do, right?
But it's really there to break down that daily soil load. That's the main function of that daily cleaner.
Yeah. So it's to make it easier to remove it, right? And so it plays such an important role. And to Dave's earlier point is, yeah, you really need to be cleaning first, the removal of unwanted matter. And then if disinfectant makes sense for your protocol, now you're getting the best of both worlds. And I think that's what we're trying to educate here is there's a place for both, but you got to have understanding and clarity on the why, right? So that you can do it effectively. Okay. So we talk about cleaning tasks, and what I hear when I'm with clients is there's just such a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. How do I ensure, or what have you guys seen that's been effective for knowing that cleaning tasks are getting done and executed? Dave, you want to start with that?
Well, I would love to say that there is an easy way to make this happen, but I'm going to go back to what Alan said. I think to clearly define what is your scope that you're trying to accomplish, because it's one thing to say we have a dirty building, and I work with large retailers. The building's dirty. There's a lot of people in and out of that building every day. There's a lot of things coming in the back room to get the shelves, and a lot of people coming in front to get the things off the shelves and out. There's weather, there's all kinds of things. I think setting a proper protocol and a proper cadence, and then setting the expectation of how we're going to handle these different areas that we want clean, and then supplying the proper procedures and products.
Yeah.
You
Because that's where I was going to go next with you. I'm on a lot of panels with you. We do some thought leadership stuff. You really push this concept of let's forget about the cleaning and all that. Let's think about the system.
Right.
Like you got to design a system. What are your thoughts on that for people who are trying to do the right thing and they're stressed with their staff? Dave brings up a great point. SOPs are awesome, but is it the right SOP? Is it going to deliver on it? What's kind of your comeback on system thinking on that?
Well, I think it's a perfect question. There's several parts to it. I always say for the system to be effective, you have to have two critical things, right? The stuff you're going to use has to be in working order, and the people who are going to use it need to know how to do it, right? So in our case, the machine has to be able to be run and the person has to be able to run it. Those two things are absolutely important, because if you start trying to manage it through checklists, or in kind of today's world, maybe IoT with some data, you could say, hey, Nick didn't run the machine. So you're going down busting on Nick, and Nick's like, I don't even know what the thing is. Nobody's trained me on it. I don't know where to use it. I think it's broken. Like, you could just run down the list. So you got to know what you're solving for. But if you know the stuff is there and ready, and you know the person is trained on your system, on your SOP, then verification becomes really effective.
Yeah.
But if you don't do the level 1 stuff, then jumping to verification just leads you down a rabbit hole.
So Nick, like if I think about you, because I've watched you do this, SOPs can be like very overwhelming because it's like literally detailing everything. What have you done with some of your clients to kind of rein in the enormity of it, maybe simplify it? I've watched you guys kind of work together at a task level. How would you explain what you've done for some of your big clients who maybe were a little overwhelmed by the total scope? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, for the type of customers that Dave and I work with, it's all about getting very specific training to the task and to the individual who's performing that task, and how does that fit within their current process. So we've done, anything from throwing on a uniform, being inside of their environment, again, just focusing on the task at hand and is getting as close to that task as we can.
I love that. And then Dave, I want to go somewhere with you for just a second. Is I've also watched you group bodies of work. Okay, so Alan's the system thinker. You know, he's bringing the high level system thinking, but I've also watched you group areas of kind of importance in that boil down. Tell me a little bit about how you've helped clean teams kind of do that, right? Like, what are these areas that matter?
Sure.
So tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, you know, I'm going to go back to what I said. If we put a level of importance on, let's just say restrooms are the thing that we're concerned about most. It's public facing. You know, we sometimes get customer ratings, customer scores, store scores. If that's it, then let's really work on the physical space of how are we going to get this clean, and who has to be involved to make sure that we're touching all of the, you know, the spots, checking all the boxes to make sure that that customer rating is getting recorded correctly. So how do we get front of house and the cleaner is working at 3 a.m. together to be successful in the space?
To drive the outcome.
So let's drive an outcome.
Right.
And to Nick's point, the guy who's cleaning, the lady who's cleaning at 3 a.m., what happens if something goes wrong and the process, the procedure, where do they get exactly what they need? And a lot of what we have done here is cater this training, you know, with uniforms and whatnot, to them at their hands, to where they can actually troubleshoot without, you know, management. They can figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
Based on something, a tool we gave them to be successful for the brand, not just 3 a.m. in a bathroom.
Yeah. I had one other thought on that I think I see a lot of people overlook is staffing cleaning workers is a challenge. The labor market is tough, right? And turnover is high. So you always need a short staffing program because it falls on what Dave said. If you've got to sacrifice something, you need to know what that is. If it's not going to be the restroom, maybe we're sacrificing something else. But whatever that is, you need to have that plan in advance. Otherwise, the system just makes itself up.
Yeah, that's what I think I've watched you guys do is you're saying, of course you want the perfect experience, but life happens. And moments like you explained with staff, what are the areas that just we can't miss? Defining those areas for your business, your brand, or your customer is monumental. So let me piggyback on this question because we're kind of heading down. Let's assume that our system has been thought through. Let's assume that the SOP is pretty good. Sounds like we're heading down a path of training, which we elaborated on. Away from like a manufacturer, if you were to advise somebody on where to get some basic skills and look for basic resources to begin educating maybe a staff member that doesn't have great cleaning knowledge, do you have any recommendations of where you would point people?
This is a really interesting question. For as big as the cleaning industry is, there's not a lot of readily available resources. One reason we're doing this kind of activity today. ISSA has some resources. There's some other things out. But as you start veering away into TikTok and YouTube and, you know, you're getting into not things that may be aligned with this system thinking. So there's content. How do I get content? And I think people want to understand what is cleaning. Like we started this conversation about what is cleaning. When I talk to cleaning workers, that's not a question they could answer, right?
Yeah.
If I talked to a carpenter and said, what is building a house? They would give me a book on what building a house is. Cleaning workers miss some of that fundamental stuff. As you try and bring it to the task level, the question I'd always ask you is, how are we getting from the content to the person? What's that journey? And is that frictionless and easy? Is it in their own language? Is it understandable? Are we talking industry jargon or are we talking kind of real talk?
Yeah. So the question that just came in on that feed, it's probably obvious, is how do I get my staff to engage in training? How do I keep kind of improving their knowledge base? Nick, this is a massive challenge to both you and Dave, who some brands that you serve have thousands of people. What are some of the creative ways? I'd like to hear from both of you as we have a few minutes left. What are some creative ways that you're helping get people to engage in training to build these skills?
I think the number one thing right now is AI. It's given us the ability to film some general training videos, swapping the language out for another language, and giving that training or giving that same training to somebody who maybe doesn't speak English,
Right.
not from this country. So
You didn't need Rosetta Stone, but
no, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
So AI has been very, very helpful for us.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. Dave, what are some fun ways that you've done to get engagement? I watched some of your participation numbers with some of your clients where you see that, hey, they came in accepting their equipment, and what is the level of adoption? What are some ways that you're working with large teams to try to get that compliance and that
Yep.
that knowledge?
Well, two things. Like I said, I work with some big retailers, so they have their own LMS system usually. So we create content that ends up in their own LMS program. So they can go through the protocol of training on site in whatever that looks like for them. Secondarily, we're in a studio. When COVID-19 happened, Alan, this happened. So everybody in the world was talking like this. And so we're able to bring in hundreds and hundreds of people to do training, to invite them into a studio, to ask questions on a screen, to get answers immediately. We can bring people from all over the world, into this environment and really be able to speak directly to a problem.
I think it's important too. Like Alan, I know this has been a frustration of just our conversations. Because you've received training once doesn't mean that you fully get it. Like, how are you in your system thinking? How are you delivering ideas on like cadences? Is like, how often should we train, Dave? Or how much do your people need, Nick? What are your thoughts on like the training cadence?
well, you need to train until you know that the knowledge has been absorbed and can be executed, and it's different for different people. So I think that's where management comes in. That's what managers do, right? Is you understand the needs of your people and you kind of level them up and continue to grow their skill base. One thing on this, and I think this is a great forum and we'd like to hear from people as we leave and give us feedback, is what we usually don't do is, as an industry, we're really bad at training cleaning workers. It's kind of like, here's the keys to the closet, everything you need's in there, good luck, right?
Yeah.
But we also don't train the site manager, whether that's at a school level, at a retail store level,
Or at a grocery level, right.
whatever it is. The manager doesn't need to know how to do everything. They definitely need to know the system. They need to know the SOP. They need to know the training content and the path to training so that they can manage people and just put them to the right resource. As an industry, we have a lot of resources. What we have is an utter lack of communication.
It's tough.
Yeah, because it's not easy.
It's not easy. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. We got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you guys. Our industry is changing fast. The needs of the community are changing fast. We're in this kind of post-COVID world. If you were to kind of put your finger on one thing that's kind of new in the industry that kind of has your attention, what are you watching happen?
Well, the big topic is robots, autonomous machines. What I would say about that, based on all my conversations with people, and we look at this as a company frequently, is there is going to be a time that it makes sense in certain applications. I don't know if that is yet today, because again, think about it like a system. I remember bringing innovation to a very big client early in my career, and he's like, Alan, there will be a day when we have those in every store, but not today, because you have no service network, you have no parts network, you can't support it when it breaks. You can't support it when it doesn't do what you think it's going to do.
Right.
So you've got to have the whole ecosystem, and that's still what's not there in kind of the robotic technology.
But it's moving.
It's moving. There's gonna,
and it is exciting.
it is
right?
exciting.
Like the whole thing is exciting because everybody wants to get
You
out.
can go on YouTube and see things that are
Totally.
crazy, right?
Nick, I'm hitting you. Alan's talking a little bit of robotics. What would you put your finger on?
I would say the obvious is battery capabilities.
Okay.
You know, we utilize a lithium ion battery. There's different types of batteries out there, but that's kind of the direction that the industry is going.
Cordless.
Cordless, a lot more flexibility, being able to accomplish many more tasks just outside of just a physical building.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too. You know, the safety, the flexibility, not having to find power. I think that's an excellent one. I think that trend's going to continue. So sometimes people are thinking, should I get in the battery game? Do I stay in cord? I think batteries are here to probably stay and is a good move where it makes sense.
But not everything is
But not
perfect for a
everything.
battery. Like
Right.
if you think about, you know, a backpack that's got a lot of water, a backpack sprayer that's already got 5 gallons, which is 40 pounds, plus the sprayer, add a battery. So you also have to think about the fatigue of the worker. You know, where's that battery going to be? How do you move the battery? That's why lithium is lightweight and
Yeah.
definitely portable, you know, compared to a whole bank of batteries. Like maybe in a big scrubber where you actually have a drive system that moves the water and the batteries around the building.
Absolutely. Dave, I'll let you have the last word.
Yep. Unquestionably, it's data. Everybody wants to know, and everybody wants to be able to see what's happening in the world and manage their fleet and manage their people. But I would say though, there's a difference between data for the sake of data and data for being able to do some actionable things with the data.
You know what
So-
that sounds like to me? That could be like our whole next topic, right? Our whole next.
Join
our
us
whole
next
deal
time.
with this. So we want to thank everybody coming. Some of the questions that were coming in were just point on. You guys were kind of piling on some of the ideas. I want to thank our customers for coming today. Those of you that joined us, this is awesome. It's a starting point for us. Remember, your feedback's important to future content that we design. So I appreciate the panel, your participation. Kaivac looks forward to serving the industry for years to come in this way. Thanks for stopping by.